Now that you know how to put your hands on the golf club, let's talk about how to stand to the ball. So the first thing that we're going to do when we're learning how to stand to the ball, we're going to take the golf club in our hands. We're going to be shoulder width apart. And what we want to do is stand tall, extend our arms, and have the end of the club point towards our belt line. We want to avoid having our arms straight out like this, where the club's pointed towards our chest. And then we want to avoid having the arms really close. So what we want to do is have about a hand's width space with the club pointed towards our belt line. Then what you're going to do is take your knees and lock them back. When you lock your knees back, it makes it stick out the rear. And when we bend forward, we're going to actually push our hips back and have this club drop down to the ground. What we want to do is avoid using our upper back and our shoulders, not pushing our hips back and standing to the ball like this. You'll become very rounded. When you become rounded, it's going to be difficult to turn your body back and through. So instead, you'll stand tall, hands with space, clubs pointed towards the belt line. You're going to lock your knees back, and as you lock your knees back, you're going to push your hips and allow this club to touch the ground. Here's some checkpoints to make sure that you're doing it correctly. The first one, you want to make sure that you have about a hand's width space between the golf club and your body. We want to avoid reaching for the ball like this. This is where you have much more than a hand's width space. The other one you want to avoid is being too close, where you can't take your right hand off and wave it in front of your legs in the club. The other essential that you'll need is balance. And so when you're standing to the ball, again, locking knees back, bending forward from the hip, you could then gently unlock your knees. But if you have the hands with space, I want you to rock back and forth, weight on your heels, weight on your toes, and find the middle. And if you have a hands with space and your balance, that's when you know you're the correct distance away from the ball. Now, all our clubs, they're different lengths. And I often get asked, like, how far should I stand away from the golf ball? So you know that you're standing the correct distance away from the ball when you set the club behind the ball first, hands with space, and balance. If you walk in with your feet first, you won't be able to visualize how far to stand away from the ball, again, because all your clubs are different lengths. But if you put the club down first behind the ball, then wave your hand and find your balance, then you'll be the correct distance away. The other checkpoint is that the end of the club should point towards our belt line. It doesn't have to point directly at our belt buckle. It could lean forward, and I'd actually encourage you to have the shaft leaning a little bit forward. But we want to make sure if we're checking it out from the side that it's pointed towards this belt line, because if not, then the club is going to be too low like this, and that means you've bent over too much. If you've bent over too much, you're going to hit the ground, too much ground. The other one that we want to avoid is standing too much up and down like this, where the end of the club's pointed towards or above our belly button. So right in the middle is our belt line. If you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're looking at your reflection of your stance, we want to make sure that the arms are hanging down. Arms hanging down, club towards the belt line, hands with space and balance. Now, the concept of standing to the ball, it's a very simple concept. It's not complicated. But you need to look at yourself in a mirror. You need to see your reflection, and you need to practice this routinely. The best way to get these pre-swing fundamentals ingrained is to just keep a club around your house. And when you walk by every so often, just put your hands on the club. If you have to go through the routine, you're more than welcome to. But if you look for those checkpoints, again, club first, hands with space and balance, clubs pointed towards our belt line. If you're able to look at those checkpoints and you do that even just a couple minutes a day, after about a week, 10 days, you'll be able to stand to the ball correctly. The other thing that's really important to understand is that you never own the fundamentals. You have to maintain them. If you don't look at your fundamentals for a while, as humans, we just drift. We're not robots. We change from day to day. So after a while, you might be standing too far away from the golf ball or too close. You might lose your posture, be bending from the back instead of your hips. And so definitely pay attention to these pre-swing fundamentals. And if you do that, you have a 100% chance of hitting a clean golf shot. The most common thing that I see are people sitting, too much knee flex, and reaching for the ball. When that happens, they have trouble brushing the grass and they end up topping it. And so when you're standing correctly to the ball and you're bending forward, there's almost a 45-degree angle, or excuse me, a 90-degree angle between the shaft and the spine. So definitely look for those checkpoints, put your hands on the club, and you'll be able to stand to the ball correctly.